what he goes to next, particularly with something like a Xayah being taken away as well. The thing with all these top lane bans, though, means that, you know, we're talking about, hey, LPL started on Jax meta, and then we had these innovations. Pretty much all of the champions we've talked about as the Jax answer are currently off the table. 369 will have to find a matchup into this top laner because we've seen Bin do some pretty disgusting things in the top lane throughout playoffs for anyone following Billy Gaming's journey. But Ala as well has a chance to put his name up there as one of the very best top laners in the LPL.
Certainly does. Jax locked in. His Fiora banned away. Again, we saw that banned by OMG previous series as well. And with the Rakan locked in, will mean that the Xayah potentially forced to be taken here by Leave to deny that Lovers duo down in the bottom side. Curious whether you go for a support here or a jungler for EDG. Do you value that duo in the bottom side, or do you want to answer this Wukong? Apparently, not even go for the Xayah.
I was about to say, with all the top lane focus, or rather the solo lane focus with the flexibility, I suppose, we have a lot of the priority junglers being let through. We've seen Vi be paired up with a lot of aggressive jungle mid lane picks as well. It allows you to play stuff like Veigar, like Talia, like Ahri as well. Lots of combos to put together with that. So having that piece of your combo set down as the versatile jungler of Vi does make a lot of sense. You're also going to take away that Xayah as well. Does mean that potentially now JDG get a chance to pinch that bot lane pool. Maybe someone like a Nautilus can be banned away. Nautilus and Renata have felt like the Rakan answers of choice. We saw players like On, actually, from BLG, have a lot of priority on Rakan. So a lot of teams have already put in that work to see what do we do against that Rakan if it's going to be so highly prioritized by not just, of course, BLG, of course, all of our teams left in our top bracket of the LPL, but still, I expect the Renata and the Nautilus to be taken away. That's one of them.
So Renata gone off the board. See what EDG choose to pinch here. See, mid lane still open and available, but that top lane, you've got your Jax locked in already. Do you want to try and deny something that perhaps could be comfort? Things like the Sion, for example, that have been incredibly strong in the meta, well. Very good for a team fight. Yeah, Gnar. Lots of options of things that you could just take away to make sure 369 doesn't have a comfort.
Yeah, so that for me, I love that first ban because that is not EDG banning that. That is Ala saying, no, let's see what he's got top lane. Let's see if 369's got something for that Jax, because despite 369 having such a great history of kind of top lane performances within the LPL, Ala really is in form right now. And in game one of this series, to see if you can just ban away the Kennen and the Gragas and see if you can get away with your priority picks, that's quite important going later into the series. We haven't seen the Nautilus banned away by JDG. Instead, seeing that Syndra ban, they say, okay, maybe we ban away some of FoFo's comfort champions. He's not played as much of the LeBlanc. He's only played the one game this spring, but it is historically a strong pick for him. And now, yeah, the question is, what does he go to now?
Ahri could be an option here. Knight, certainly good in the mid-jungle 2v2. The LeBlanc and the Syndra, kind of vintage picks for both Knight and FoFo. They love these lane-dominant champions, and I feel like that's a bit of mutual respect there. That once the Syndra was gone, the LeBlanc gets taken off as well. Ahri locked in for Knight, though. We have to see what EDG want to do to answer that, and I'd love to see this from FoFo. Another vintage pick for him. It's always been incredible. On the Akali, certainly does well in the scraps once you pass level 6.
It does. You're expecting to get pushed in that sort of matchup. You do have kill threat onto the largely very squishy members of JDG. So thinking about a couple of these dive buddies with the Vi, something like a Talia also wouldn't go amiss. There are options left available, so they kind of leave their mid lane pick open a little bit later. And they say lock in that Lulu, play the Enchanter matchup with the Xayah. It's not the most common support matchup we see with the Xayah, but Meiko himself has had a number of very good performances on this pick. And it does give FoFo a bit more time to think about the combination with the Vi. Veigar has been another kind of primary CC into CC combo. It is going to be locked in. This probably means that you're playing very defensively now in JDG's kind of vision control. Because if you do get caught out with a Vi into the Veigar, Wukong, Ahri, they do get 100-0 if they don't play respectfully around that. You need to be very careful not to get caught out by them.
Really curious where JDG go with their final pick. Looks like it might be the Sion. Obviously, the classic Jax answers have been back, right? So 369 goes back to the Sion. Kind of a tried and true pick in the current meta. We've got a lot of power coming out from our AD carries and a lot of ability to impact the map here from our mid-jungle 2v2. I mean, Nymaera, what's your take on the draft here? Because I feel like this really is a matter of perspective of what picks you value as opposed to what company an outright better.
For sure. I think there's a lot of comfort, right, when you particularly look at Meiko going towards the Lulu. I think that maybe EDG could lack a bit of engage because they didn't opt in for something like a Nautilus, because they didn't opt in for something like a Leona either. You're really looking at EDG to play through strong Jack, strong
between JDG and EDG, and I could not be more excited to see how this one pans out. You know the drafts are going to get exciting, but I'm hoping that these early games are going to get exciting as well. JDG, not one usually to let things go slowly. They do like to take things into their own hands. And, you know, I feel like this matchup is somehow a bit of a brains versus brawns matchup.
Yeah.
And, you know, in 2020, that's what we said about top esports JDG. But now I feel like it's almost JDG swapping identities over the years. And now they've become this team that really likes to try and really play aggressive, play through their hands, you know, and win through the brawn.
Yeah, and I think there is some intelligence to that. As level 1 does come through, of course, Aphelios with no abilities means that this likely won't lead to a kill or anything, but I think the intelligence of that brawn approach is saying they know themselves at least. It's not like they're trying to kid themselves. They know they're really good at laning phase. They know they're very good mechanical players. Why would you not play towards that? It's not like JDG are kind of, you know, bereft of that sort of intelligence as well. It's just that on the other side, EDG, it felt like they are the team which has been above anyone else more than the sum of their parts. I mean, it really is encapsulated in the super team versus the team that has somehow become super. And particularly that has been from the likes of Jiejie. Watch out for him on this fight, starting out on the top side of the map, potentially making early inroads towards the bot lane, towards level 3.
Oh, big damage at the bottom side. Ruler having to use his Ghost already, still has Flash available, missing. Forced to use his Summoner. 2 summoners for 1. EDG will be taking that trade any day of the week. Another bit of Pokemon to missing as well. This is a dominant start for EDG's 2v2.
It is, and one of the worries we had coming out of JDG's first playoffs match versus DLG was actually what happens when they don't have the Zeri Lulu in laning phase. When they went to their second string of bot lane champions, it felt like the 2v2 was not as stable as potentially it could be. We know how dominant Ruler and Missing absolutely can be on these picks, but Leave and Meiko have forged a name for themselves on other picks.
Yeah. And it has to be said, when we're talking about the previous series of playoffs, I don't think a single argument can be made that EDG didn't look better in their series than JDG. Like, you've got EDG smashing OMG 3-1, where OMG, they did manage to get a win in, but it felt like EDG were winning for the vast majority of that series. It felt like a dominant win there. JDG, that series against BLG, if you missed it, it was a very strange series, very back and forth, and not super convincing. Like, a lot of people saying that really BLG kind of won that series in quotation marks, but couldn't actually finish the job. So we've got 2 very different previous series coming into it.
Yeah, and as someone who thought it would go 3-2 to BLG and put that on the predictions, I'm still going to claim like honorable victory in that case, but JDG, they felt lucky kind of getting away from that one. It won't have to matter though if they come into today strong, but having this early laning phase not necessarily go towards them, particularly with this 2v2 on paper, meant to be a lot more even than it has been in the first few levels. Gonna have to be a little bit worried. Junglers now are both on the bot side of the map. Jiejie, level 4 to level 3, contesting over Scuffle.
Yeah, Knight trying to move over as well, but with FoFo in the area, the bottom lane of EDG moving. Knight flashing! Answered by FoFo, really trying to make things happen here. JJ could look for Kanavi, who gets his Nimbus strike over to the minion wave. Knight, he just used his flash! And he's gone way too far forward. It's the easiest first blood I've ever seen in the world.
Knight looking like a pawn at that point. He just goes in way out of sorts and you can't retreat. What are you doing initiating that play when you don't have the numbers advantage? EDG, jungler, bot lane, already in that river. Very overambitious from Knight, maybe thinking that they could solo out FoFo in the duration of the Charm CC, but it doesn't come through. What that means now is you've given a lead over to this Xayah who didn't have to expend any resources. You can already see that, you know, EDG's bot lane making some really big moves themselves. Knight goes for the bit of a reaction play, just hopes that FoFo's caught off guard. But for me, I don't understand why you're making that play in the first place. You're outnumbered, you're outgunned. Goes down for first blood fairly easily.
You see him just trying to clear as many minions away as he can before he goes down there. Yeah, very aggressive play coming out from Knight. I mean, look, I like to see that level of proactivity, though. I'm not sure if it would have been possible. Like, even if they find FoFo, can they kill him there? I'm not so sure, but Either way, I like to see that proactivity. Kanavi moving into the top side. Ala just trying to trade aggressively here. Has the island to play with, rewarding the tri-brush. And I think he's just going to walk away from this one. Kanavi can't find his way in. The slow from 369. Is it enough? Kanavi manages to escape that one. Ala jumping over to the minion wave.
Well, so Ward and the tri-brush really helping out the Jax there. Knowing that if you can just keep his lethal tempo stacked up, you can get away with that, forcing Sion out of that play. So, we're asking about the early impact of these junglers on the map so far. What we have seen is Jiejie securing his bot side kind of dominance, capitalizing on that, getting that bot lane scuttle, and then trying to, well, rather securing that first blood for his team by focusing down onto Knight after that point. Kanavi on the other side now has to deal with something that we've not known him to deal particularly well with before. Losing bot lane, not particularly strong in this top side of the map either, and first death in this mid lane. Kanavi has to play with losing lanes.
I mean, it's a phenomenal start for EDG. It really is. Like, the first Drake, like you said, winning that scrap of the Scuttle Crab, winning the 2v2 at level 1-2 for EDG as well. It feels like absolutely everything that could be going their way is going their way. And even in the top side, right, like you say, Kanavi trying to make the play happen, but Ala playing around that island. Kanavi, though, wants to get into these lanes once again. Needs to feel like he's having an early impact here. It's 369, could be in trouble. Ala going for the all-in, will be knocked up again. But is just hitting away during the meantime. 369 getting the best of the trade as the ults come out. It looks like Kanavi's seen better of the play. Will be spotted once again. Surely leaving Meiko is safe here. They've got their own jungler coming.
They have wards, they have all of their summoners available. Again, Kanavi cannot find his inroads in the same way that Jiejie can. Trying to make something happen with his Wukong, but doesn't even have something like that Cyclone. So JDG feels like they've been really penned in by EDG, especially after those, after the first summoner loss, the first blood came through. Now waiting for them to really find their own entrance into this game. It might be around something like that Herald coming up in just that minute. See if there's any resets coming through for that, how the supports and AD carries respond to that as well.
Let's see. Herald has been a big point of contention just off the back of that tempo that it can get. Gold leads that it can get you in the early game.
Knight's
like quite often, you see teams that like to win early, going for the Herald over the Dragons. Like you say, trying to move up top, but once again, Jiejie, every single place that Kanavi goes to, Jiejie is on the same side of the map, so I don't think a dive could come on through, really. Get themselves the Scuttle Crab. That's a blue buff as well.
Potentially. So, Kanavi, Knight actually getting into the enemy jungle. This is while FoFo's on reset, but I think Jiejie kind of knowing that he has the wolves to hide behind, stray skill shots means that a charm can easily connect even if they had wards over that Raptor pit. Gets himself that camp, gets himself ahead in that jungle CS, as we're currently seeing, as Kanavi at least going to get himself back into his own jungle to keep up in that regards. Herald has now spawned. What's happening with these resets? We see both bot lanes have now made their base. Really interested to see if Meiko heads up towards his Herald. Indeed, he is. JDG, they've shown on the bot lane wave. Leave is going to collect that wave at turret. Means that Leave will not be at the fight. That's absolutely fine. It does mean that if a fight were to come about, Meiko would be there first to respond because Missing has stayed to help Ruler shove in that lane. He's moving up now, but he's going to be a little bit behind Meiko.
He is, and not level 6, crucially, for either of the supports. As Ala once again using that ultimate, abusing the minor cooldown he has, advantage he had on those ultimates. It means 369, no flash available. EDG have already got the Herald by the time JDG arrives. Cyclone is in. Knight is stunned though. The double stun from FoFo is gorgeous. The answer now is Knight finding one for himself as Missing gets the killing blow. 369 1v1ing Ala, and Knight moves up to try and save the day, but 369 already went down. FoFo next cleanses the charm instantly. Now trying to turn it around once again. FoFo no ultimate here. It's a messy, messy fight, but EDG come out on top again.
Me too. Knight does get a couple of resets through. Makes things a little bit awkward because Ala is very, very low, trying to hold off that Sion. Ala's been very liberal in trying to trade ult for ult against the Sion to make sure that 369 cannot have the larger early game impact which Sion can sometimes have in these team fights. We already noted that Meiko was here first. Meiko got to this plate, can get into fight, starts polymorphing. You see Ala basically just says, I'm going to take myself out of that fight and make sure that Ala is as well. Problem is, by the time this happens, Missing does arrive to the plate and soaks mid-lane XP, so has the quickness to at least bring something back to JDG. Stops it being as clean for EDG as potentially they would have liked.
Yeah, but to be honest, a trader kills when you're getting the Herald as well. Still going to like how that one's going for EDG. 1,000 gold up now. And a phenomenal early game for the squad. JDG, got to figure out what they want to do now, because you do have this Wukong Ahri. Generally speaking, you want to be trying to find these picks. You want to be scrapping earlier on, but it doesn't feel like that's ever been on the cards for them. It feels like EDG answering everything that Kanavi tries to do.
It's done. Now, Haversaws potentially a 3v3 brewing. Ultimate's not available for everyone across the board there. EDG, this is something that they've done quite a lot. They don't necessarily always look for fights. Long gone are the days where every LPL team would look for every fight possible. We've calmed down. I feel like we've matured a little bit, Joe. Maybe a little bit. But still, coming into these bot lane plays, EDG, around this bot side of the map, they're just happy to just match man for man at some points and stop JDG making plays for themselves. That means that they can stop JDG getting themselves into the river for free. Second dragon is spawned now. It gives them the ability to stay in the river, go towards this objective for an easy kind of flow in from stopping JDG playing around the bot side of the map and collecting an objective for themselves.
So another great sequence of plays for EDG. Super solid start for them. And I feel like a lot of people kind of still have that recent World Championship in their mind for EDG, right? Back in 2021. But when you look at 2022, it wasn't the most convincing year for EDG. It feels like this rebuild was necessary for the team. You know, in Spring Playoffs 2022, only 7th, 8th place. And in summer, they managed to get up to 3rd. They managed to make it to Worlds, but again, only quarterfinals at the World Championship. I feel like that was the final nail for that roster of EDG, the one that won the World Championship. And now, we've talked about it all year long. Jiejie and Meiko being the pieces that this new roster has been built around. Moving down to the bottom side, wants to punish Leave, the player, that rookie. Joined the squad, won NEST with the LDL EDG roster. Now on the Meiko,
that's a cheeky shield
to stop the denial of the recall. That was gorgeous.
It was. Meiko has actually been a very impactful Lulu player. It has felt like Meiko has perfected the art of just being annoying on this champion, making your life difficult. The art of playing an Enchanter is not always about the big engages, because of course you're not going to do the same thing as a Nautilus or something like that, but you can play these edge situations and just stop your enemy team getting the advantages they expect them to do. But I think it's very right that you bring up the whole story of rebuild, because it feels like that has been the story of the LPL in general. Ult's trade in the spot side, particularly when you have that Calibrum. The ultimate allows you to get some pretty powerful damage very early on. Leave trading it out to make sure that if the dive does come in, at least you got the HP to play around it. Jiejie now caught out, Knight's roaming.
Let's dive in the jungle instead. Jiejie locked up by the end. Crosshair should go down. Kanavi with the kill. And JDG on a positive play. They're looking for a dive at the bottom side as well. Meiko zoned by Knight as Leave. Taken down under the tower. Missing, happy to tank those shots up. It is a clean dive from JDG.
It is. After the Dragon was taken a little earlier, EDG did not stop JDG getting bot side vision control into their jungle. They reset after that point. That allowed them to get towards that bot side of the map. Leave might trade that ultimate earlier to keep himself up in HP, but he doesn't then have the Feather Storm to outplay the dive itself. EDG not quick enough to respond. Going into the replay, see how this came about from Jiejie's perspective as he's clearing through vision. I think EDG, you know, they know that they've given up bot side vision control. I just don't think they realize that JDG are playing around that very vision at that point. You see it really funky around the ultimates coming through. Knight shoved back over the wall, but when Ahri gets that first kill, of course, you start getting those extra ultimate charges coming through at the same time. Without Vi there to save off the dive, Leave without that ultimate, as we were calling out before, really not able to protect himself. So a good sign from JDG brings them back to even and gold after an early game that we've been praising EDG for.
Yeah, we're a minute away from that fateful 15-minute mark. And I just want to quickly mention that JDG, when they're ahead at 15 minutes, 90.9% win rate. With EDG, they've got them beat. Because EDG, during the regular season, did not lose a single game when they were ahead at 15 minutes. And the gold in touching distance as we're just 45 seconds away. Alla, absolutely wailing on 369, but he got his plates and he's happy to walk away with it.
And he has. Of course, 369 took this matchup into that. Jax has just said, look, you know, I'm going to lose a couple of these extended trades, but at least I can keep up in farm. At least I can get a little bit of value for myself, even though Ala's damage numbers are probably going to look monstrously high after this game is done. Second Herald has spawned. It's going to be EDG heading towards that again. With Kanavi not on the same side of the map, they're not going to be contesting for that one, but they're okay with that. They get themselves a first turret of the game, first turret of the series in that bot side for Ruler on the Aphelios. Good amount of gold for him, especially considering the first level or two, it felt like Ruler and Missing were having some shaky moments in the 2v2, which we've known them to have away from that Zeri. This is a good stabilizing influence for them to get Ruler towards his Imperious team fighting.
Yeah, and that's one thing that hasn't fallen off for Ruler is when you get to the late game. The team fighting is immaculate. Has his Mythic online, sees Recall, got a BF sword as well. So we'll be ever so slightly ahead in terms of AD carries, at least for the time being. And that could make a difference because Drake coming up in 40 seconds. You see 369 pushing away, doesn't have his TP. He's got 35 seconds to finish that tower and get down to the rest of the map.
Suddenly, JDG brush that bot side turret, get a couple of demolished procs in a row towards top side as well. In that counter matchup with that Sion, we thought it was going to be a consolation matchup. Maybe it's a little bit more than that. 369 getting really good value out of this. That means that JDG now have opened up the sides of the map. This might be in cost for that soul point. That would be the danger. So they really need to start sticking the landing on this point. How are they setting up for this objective? They're teleported in Ahri, got themselves as much gold spent as they possibly can. Got a stopwatch for this fight on the Ahri as well. Maybe that'll help Knight try and initiate dash forward with the Everfrost, get some big CC. Here comes the Sion.
Leaves in trouble. He needs to leave, but he's knocked up and will be taken out. Poured out of position and FoFo forced the flash as well. JDG, they lose the first 10 minutes, but the second 15 is on its way. They take over. Another charm lands, and it's another kill for JDG. That'll be Drake, and that'll be the gold lead.
And despite everything we talked about with EDG setting themselves up for success in the first few minutes of the game, it has not come through in the very important last couple of minutes. JDG, they call EDG's bluff around that bot side, they take them apart around that dragon, and now they find themselves in a gold lead. They stop the dragon stacking. JDG, we're talking about that important timestamp for them to try and hit that lead at 15 minutes. They're very much at that point now, and a lot of it is from Leave, the rookie AD carry, this crazy blowout split from this AD carry. Has an awkward moment in that fight. Just gets picked off. Doesn't have that flash to save himself at that point. Leaves the rest of the team in a real lurch.
He had his Gale Force. I would have said surely path down. Gale Force away from the side.
Go into your jungle.
Either way, yeah. The Feather Storm, not enough to save him on this one. And it does, you know, you always have to bring up the question of rookie split. He's in the upper bracket final. How much pressure can he deal with? Did well during the laning phase, but being dived earlier on and now losing out in that team fight. We'll see. We'll keep a track on him across the course of the series because, like you say, he really has had a phenomenal year so far. And it would be out of character for him to have a rough series. I don't think we've seen occasionally him not have the greatest game, but like it's few and far between. We've never seen it for a full series.
For sure, and it has felt like Leave in their game versus OMG as well was by far the better AD carry than Abel, who himself has had a really good split. FoFo popping that goes towards the top side. Knight sees that and goes, nope, ulti away. He's already got himself a fair amount of cooldown reduction between Ionian Boots and then the Everfrost. Doesn't want to risk those Dark Steel stacks he's built up as well. Got 6 of them on the table. See if Knight can snowball this game with those in mind. We're into a very different phase of the game now, because just kind of quickly recapping what has happened, particularly because just before that last Dragon fight, JDG, they took the top lane and the bot lane out of turrets basically simultaneously. We're now playing around wider side lanes. It means that EDG, if they want to control these side lanes, they've got to move multiple people to one side of the map. You can see that Veigar's pushing in. That means that the Vi has to be there. That means that Meiko potentially has to be hanging out there as well, which means that JDG needs to be aware of where EDG are moving members around the map, but it is quite telegraphed from EDG when they've put someone like this Veigar in a side lane.
Certainly is. I will say, Knight, you know, 3-1-3. I'm a little disappointed that we're seeing the Banshees as well as the Everfrost. It is a little bit like, I'm so fed, but I'm just going to be offended. That said, though, does have 6 stacks. Maybe he could go bench.
Those are good. Oh, that's good. And it's really good when you can start making plays like this. No flash in FoFo. He's just dead.
I mean, even if he had flash, he doesn't get a chance to use it. Just absolutely into the meat grinder. Potentially a chance on a tier 2 on the top side.
It is, because EDG, didn't we just talk about, hey, when they send this Veigar to a side lane, they need to send someone with him. I only saw FoFo on that side of the map, and JDG, they spot that and they say, okay, this is a moment for us to play around. Dragon's not up on the other side. It's not like there's anything of a cross-map potential from EDG. JDG, very clean in recognizing when they can make these big moments happen. Now Knight stat on those 8 stacks. Maybe again, looking towards even bigger snowball, particularly with Kanavi starting to rack up some gold himself on the Wukong.
You know, it's not a fast take on the tower, but ultimately that pick on FoFo, it's a full minute later, but they do take that tier 2 tower. Another massive influx of gold, and you can see it's a 4,000 gold lead now for JDG. They were barely ahead at the 15-minute mark. Now at the 20-minute mark, they have massively snowballed things. 2 items now for Ruler as well. 369 practically invincible with the Jack shoulder Sunfire Cake.
And we have 3 items on the Ahri because we've got the Medjais. We finally see it. I have been waiting for this for so long. Knight doesn't let me down. He's been doing this for years. Look. The thing about something like Medjai Soul Stealer is that it is also a legendary item. It's the same gold as a needlessly large rod to upgrade it from a Dark Seal up to the full item, but it also activates whatever mythic item you've got. So with Everfrost, you get an extra 10 AP out of that. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it starts to rack up. And now if JDG get one blowout fight, get a couple assists in there, you start to really flying off the handle. And of course, at full stacks, and Medjai is 140 AP as a whole item. JDG, they know how to snowball, they know how to take fights, and by putting their life into a much easier scenario, EDG cannot afford mistakes, particularly around Knight's Ahri at this point.
They certainly can't. But then Knight can't afford mistakes either, because that goes both ways. If he does get caught out, if he does have a bit of a flop during one of these fights. But I will say, of all of the players to trust with the Medjais, Knight has always been an avid reader in that mid lane. He's the guy that will build it every single game, and I'm glad to see it here in playoffs, in the upper bracket finals. This ain't Knight's first upper bracket finals, let me tell you.
Far from it. He's been at the very top echelons of the LPL before, and now coming into this mid game as well. Trying to get to those finals yet again. It would be 3rd in a row, as you said. Knight uses the spell, but goes heading towards that top side. Going to find Jiejie out here. There are plays to be made.
Oh, Charm just short. Jiejie might not be able to escape this one. Flash comes out. Cyclone won't quite connect, but Missing does. Jiejie trying to turn things around onto Missing, but he dashes away with his life. Knight's still going, but he's out of all charges at this point. Ala is here. Missing escapes thanks to 369. Buying space and time. Look how beefy that boy is in the top side.
But the play does fizzle out. EDG, they stop one of these first big plays coming through from JDG. They blow some of those ultimates. Remember, EDG, they don't have many mistakes left in the tank, especially with JDG pulling ahead of the game. Starting to get their own dragons to their own name as well. 2 mountain dragons stacked up for them. EDG, that is about as well as they could have expected that to go. At least they don't make the big mistake.
Yeah, no big mistake on either side. Both teams just about getting away with the sequence of play. It does mean JDG now 2 Drakes on their side as well. Which means, you know, that win condition potentially for EDG of stacking the Drakes feels like a long way away. And also, just worth mentioning, I feel like you have to say it every time, right? We got Mountain Drakes for the Soul. There's a Sion for JDG. Yep. Like, if they keep getting these Mountain Drakes, it doesn't matter what Leaf builds. He's not going to be able to kill the Sion.
Yeah. You're sat there, Leaf just looks kind of pointedly towards JJ and goes, can you please stack Black Cleaver on the Sion, please? And he looks towards the Jax as well, who's finished theirs, because they're going to have to, because they're going to have to be a pseudo Last Whisper item for the AD carry before they get that amount of gold. We've got to fight towards the bot side, then Jungle's fighting in the bot lane.
Navi surviving for a second there. The charm comes out from Knight, but it's too little too late. It's a nice little pickup from FoFo. And Jiejie, and I think Kanavi thought he'd found FoFo there, but sorely mistaken.
Yeah, Meiko was even on the roam first as well. Now EDG, big moment. Take the smite away. It's post 20 minutes, despite them being behind in gold. JDG, we talked about them not being able to make too many mistakes either. They make a pretty big one.
Yeah, Kanavi being caught 20 seconds till the jungler's back on the map. JDG need a 4v5 in the Baron pit. Missing goes in with the quickness. Leave already used the Venom Storm, but surviving for now. Ruler stunned up on the backside as Ala tries to take down the AD carry, but Knight is tearing them apart inside the pit. 369 threatening as well. Ala turns it around and gets a kill on Missing instead, but now taken down. JDG 4v5. They get the 2 kills.
They use the fact that EDG funnels themselves into the Baron pit. They pin themselves against the objective, taking damage there to their advantage. It adds that extra damage they need at that point. JDG, they do give up that Baron. Does mean EDG will be able to reset, push out waves someplace across that map. Going back into the replay, look, let's go check the big hits. Let's see what ends up happening in this one. Missing forces out the Xayah ult very, very early. 369 is on a different angle from the rest of his team as well, so Leave doesn't get the best feather value. And that means that if Leave isn't getting awesome value, it gives some extra space to the likes of Ruler, to Knight, and the rest of the team to pick up some kills thereabouts. Obviously, have to point this out as well. Knight lives, Knight gets a kill and an assist coming from this as well, so that means it's up to 14 stacks, over that 10 stack mark, so get some extra value at that point. Meiko,
oh no, Meiko! He flashes straight at the Sion, but dodges the skill shots. Knight, though, chasing for more here, and the Q comes down! 369 slams Meiko into the floor, and suddenly JDG, they've got the man advantage, they've got an opportunity to make things happen.
Yep, Baron be damned. No one is there to push out that wave in the mid lane. EDG, they split too far and they lose their support. JDG now with a great chance to push in.
Oh, the baby cage finds 3. It's not a lot of follow-up. 369 practically invincible. But the tower doesn't go down. They managed to defend for now, and Allah behind enemy lines. Counter-strike coming on through. Knight with a charm to keep them away. Kanavi clones it up. They fall for the bait. Missing might not be so lucky. Has the quickness available. Needs a teammate to jump to. Should be able to find it over the wall. Right back. Just going to use the grand entrance instead. 50 seconds on the Drake though, Nymaera.
Okay, so let's talk about that setup. EDG, they kind of survive the siege. They're going to go try and take themselves this mid lane outer turret. This is a thorn in the side of any team trying to play through vision control. So JDG, they're not actually able to reset because of this. They try and defend a little bit of this wave. Does mean that Knight's still out on the map. 369 still out on the map. They've not been able to spend any of their gold from the last series of plays and recover some of that HP. Finally going to get themselves off to that point. But they're going to have to teleport back ASAP.
Yeah, 2 TPs out from the solo lane. It's 369 mid. And Knight goes down to the bottom lane, trying to fight for priority, trying to fight for a way back into their own jungle. EDG using this Baron very effectively. But despite being on half of the kills this game, it's only 1,500 gold between the two teams. Leave going very far forwards here. He's caught up. Then stops to keep himself alive. Pulls them back in shortly. Is missing low on HP. Sion on the front line, buying space and time, and Leave goes down. Knight assassinating everybody. That's 25 stacks on the Ahri as Ruler walks away with his life. Kanavi chasing FoFo, and JDG playing a blinder.
Knight taking matters into his own hands, makes the damage for the plays, full stacks, and FoFo has a little bit of damage to his own right and a fair amount of HP. Might be able to kite this out somewhat. See what he can do. He's going to teleport out. Sees he has the HP to play around with it. Missing does not want to get a Q to the face. Lets him go. Lets him escape to tell the tale. JDG, they win another huge fight. They bring things back onto their side of the map. After EDG try and push them in, they take that dragon, they take the fight. They are very much into a stable position into this game now.
They certainly are. And do you know, the funny thing is, for most of the players on EDG, feels like a fine game. Leave, though, consistently stepping too far forwards and being punished by JDG.
And there's a lot of engagement onto the side of JDG as well. We saw that 369 can just stand there, use a Q to zone out a portion of the team fight. Leave gets caught by that one. The fight starts resetting afterwards. Knight gets himself up to full stacks after this one as well. Pulled that out midway through. He's picked up a one-shot death cap coming through from this. Now, Medjai's on its own, 140 AP.
Is it?
Add the extra 35% AP from Death Cap, that is 189 AP from a single item. Knight at this point has transitioned into an assassin Ahri, despite the fact that the Everfrost, the Banshees, and then the Stopwatch are in there as well. Very much at the point where anyone besides maybe Allah is going to get one shot by this Ahri if they find the angle.
This is the thing. You can build a Banshees and an Everfrost if you know you can get 25 stacks on a Medjai's. There's not many players in the world that are confident that they'll be able to pull that off. But Knight certainly making it happen today. It's only a 3,000 gold lead though for JDG, but it feels like a lot more, especially with the 3 Mountain Drakes in pocket. Almost 30 minutes on the clock. JDG maintaining this lead, pushing for more, taking down the final tier 2 on the map. The only thing remaining is cracking the base. Baron's coming up in just a minute for exactly that purpose.
So EDG, I mean, despite just kind of talking about JDG and their victories in the last minute or so, EDG did put them into a bit of an awkward scenario. It did feel like JDG, they tried to, after they caught Meiko in that mid lane, EDG, they survived the siege and managed to keep JDG out on the map. That's kind of the brains part of this equation. We've talked about the brains versus the brawn. EDG, they've tried to force JDG to play away from their advantages, play before they can reset, play before they've spent their gold. right now, you're looking for another one of those situations again. What can they do to stop JDG having full advantage? That will start with a lot of vision control. We'll start with trying to get in towards these objectives first, if they can do so, and pick around the Veigar cage. Stop 369 being in position for someone else. You see that missing. Caught out Ala on the side.
Oh, Ala in the wrong place here. It's not missing caught out this time. It's absolutely not. That's a 50-second death timer, and that is a wide open window for JDG to start this Baron off. Remember, FoFo has Spellbook, but I'm pretty sure he just swapped Summoners, so won't be able to go for the smite. It'll just be on Jiejie. And, I mean, Baron's already gone. EDG not even going to try for this one. And I think rightly so. I think that could have been game, honestly, if they lose a fight at the Baron. And now, JDG with a Baron buff in pocket. They can just waltz this one in the mid lane.
They can do, because 369 on this Sion. Remember, this was the last pick for JDG. They saw Ala's first pick Jax, left the entire draft through and said, you know what, let's just pick the good old Sion. I'm sure that'll work out. 369, the first all-pro top laner, coming through with a pick that we've expected to fail against Ala's Jax, really getting value out of it and allowing them to push into the base.
This will be 2 inhib towers, and probably 2 inhibs as well. 369 having a phenomenal performance today. Having a phenomenal split, but not the greatest most recent series. Missing, finding a double knockup, but throwing his own life in for the cause. Ruler charging forwards, trying to get that damage out. The inhibs will go down no matter what. Can JDG get away with it, or potentially find more? A TP from Ala, wants to get behind enemy lines. Ultimate's pretty much on cooldown here, certainly for 369 is in they go. Jiejie knocked up and will just get taken out. And before Ala can even arrive, his whole team has been taken to pieces. Ruler surviving as Kanavi's on the backline, 1v2ing. FoFo can't deal with the monkey business that's going on. Ala falls, FoFo chased into the jungle, but this is Kanavi's jungle. The rest of JDG ending the game as FoFo sent packing on the other side of the map.
Lethal team fight from JDG as they will strike first in the winners bracket final, putting themselves one step closer to their first ever MSI.
What a phenomenal performance here in game number 1 from JDG. And you know, dicey in the early game, losing the 2v2 in the bottom lane. Felt like Jiejie had an answer to everything Kanavi wanted to do. But then, I don't know, it was like 12 minutes into the game or something, JDG seemed to flip the switch. And since that point, they went from strength to strength. It felt like they always had tempo. It felt like they knew exactly what they needed to do to close the game.
It felt like after the second Dragon, JDG they flipped the switch. They got a load of really good vision control around the bot side jungle of EDG. That led into a bot dive. That led into... It felt like EDG kind of lost the plot a little bit at that point. They lost 2 towers in very quick succession on the sidelines, and then they lost a big objective fight. They kind of all in to try and get themselves that third Dragon. Didn't end up working for them. And JDG, as we said, when they play through an advantage, when they have the power in pocket, they are so incredibly good at seeing out advantages. On a personal level, very happy to see the Medjai's Ahri coming out again. I've been a big proponent of that. And the fact that Knight could do that to that degree and play with the confidence that we know he has is a great sign for JDG to start off this series.
Yeah, and we've been talking a lot about top laners across the course of this split, and I feel like the top lane pool is very stacked this year. Bin so far has been kind of the leader of the pack, and I feel like today, Ala versus 369, you're fighting for number 2 on the tier list, and then we'll see if anyone can take out Bin later in playoffs. But right now, 369 looking fantastic in that conversation. Ala didn't necessarily have a bad game. I feel like he was up against it here with how the game went. Not a whole lot he could do about it. But 369, after the series against BLG, really having some rough games for himself, off the back of a dominant split, I was a little bit nervous because in my experience, 369 goes in waves. He either is dominating or being dominated. And quite often it's a period of time, but feels like he's pulled himself together after that series against BLG and having a fantastic start.
Yeah. Which raises questions now for, okay, game 2 coming up. What are we going to see in terms of draft adaptation? We saw an awful lot of solo lane focus and top lane focus from the draft. We saw that first pick Jax. And then somehow a last pick Sion. It's very rare that you see a first pick in one role answered by the can pick at the very end of the draft on the other side. I'm wondering if we're going to see one of these teams look at trying to deny a cannon, or rather like allow a cannon through, see if one team can try and break that power pick. Because Ala, he was given one of his power picks. He was given all of the draft advantage in the world, and he couldn't quite make it work. EDG as a team couldn't make that top lane matchup work because the rest of the map snowballed around them. I think EDG, they'll need to switch things up in terms of their ban priorities, I feel, coming into Game 2.
Have to change how they're approaching this one. I mean, partly, I see the Veigar and the Jax and a Xayah in your AD carry as well. I see a lot of scaling, and I don't see that much ability to fight in the early game, which does feel like a lot of this series is going to be down to early game fights. Around the 15-minute mark, we really did start to see JDG wrestle control of the game. Missing as well, having a fantastic game. Like, so many of these moments, missing starting off. 369, quite often finding big knockups on Leave as well. Like, Leave, I think, stepping out of position a few times too aggressively and being punished pretty heavily.
And I think, you know, despite LPL actually being quite good at the ranged, like support kind of meta, I think a lot of these supports are very happy to have their Rakans back, to have those playmaking moments.
Big time. Yeah, we've got a lot of Baolan fans in our support pool here in the LPL. In fact, we've literally got Baolan in the support pool in the LPL. We're going to jump into a break, and we'll see how things will go in game number